So that's the first thing I always say is you've got to find the cues. You'll find what you're looking for. You can go find a deserted strip mall with nothing in it. Oh, look, times are tough.
Right.
Or you can go find one like, good God, look at all these people. God, there's a line out the door for that place.
Yeah.
You'll find what you're looking for.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I am so excited to kick off the inaugural episode of the Sales Spark podcast with, I honestly couldn't, when I was asked, who do you want to think about as guests? I said, I already know who I want my first guest to be. And that is none other than my good friend and buddy, Bryan Neale from Blind Zebra. Bryan, tell the folks, just give a little quick introduction, who you are, what you do. If we didn't know you, what would you want us to know?
This is great. I'm mostly known as being the first ever guest on the Sales Spark podcast. That's how most people know me.
Yes.
Oh, this is so good.
Yes.
I didn't realize. I mean, I maybe should have, but congrats, dude. This is awesome.
You.
This is
I really appreciate
that. I've been doing sales training, sales coaching work since June 3rd, 1997, literally when I started. And I've been doing a sales podcast in September of 2006, which puts us in the 19-year mark.
Do you know how many downloads roughly that you're at?
15 million, 16 million life. It's a lifetime, so it's not huge, but I tell everyone, man, we just outlasted. We started early and outlasted everybody. We started early and outlasted. It's what we did. So, and then my company's called Blind Zebra, and it's called Blind Zebra on purpose because people that will listen to Jason's show, I don't know if it's that clear to some people, but I'm also an NFL referee. I've been refereeing the NFL for this will be my 12th season coming up, starting in 4 days.
12. Okay.
Uh-huh.
I was telling somebody about you the other day, and I couldn't remember. I was like, I think it's like 10 or 11-ish.
Yeah, 12. Just finished 11. It's awesome.
Wow.
And Jason and I have been friends for a long time. I'm so proud of you, dude. This is just awesome. You're just doing what we teach, right? You're just starting. Like people are like, oh, I go to a podcast. You're like, oh, I'm going to. And I'm going to have an episode.
I'm thinking about it. I'm getting it together. I'm putting the framework down.
Yeah. I just want to make sure, like work through some things, kind of get the show voice just kind of set, maybe kind of oughta. Here we are, dude.
Well, and that leads me right into the first thing that I wanted to talk about, that we share this back and forth because some of you who are listening will know Bryan and I got together in college and were founding. Bryan was one of the three musketeers that really started the thing. I was on a short list. I think it was short. That's what I want to believe anyway, of people who wanted to be involved with Dance Marathon. And so we were the inaugural Dance Marathon group, and then Bryan graduated and I stayed on for another year. And I remember, Bryan, when I met you, after college, and I'd lived overseas, and you'd gone and done your things, and we had lunch together. I referenced this lunch so many times, you have no idea. But I didn't know what you did, and I said, "What do you do?" And you said, "Well, I'm a sales coach." And I said, "That's great. What the hell does that mean?"
Right.
And you told me something, that I have repeated the story multiple times. But do you remember what you said? It was the thing that had to do with the numbers.
I don't remember the exact numbers I used, but is it something to do with 70% of the people don't know what you're teaching them, and the 30% that do need to be reminded, something like that.
It was actually 75-25.
75-25. So numbers change.
Yeah. And I said, because you told me, you said, think of, and if you're listening along, do this too. You said, think of 5 things that have made you, that you just know, that you could talk about, just make up a list in your head. And I said, okay, cool. And you said, here's the thing, 75% of the world doesn't know that.
It's true.
And I was like, that's total bullshit. I completely don't believe it. And you were like, okay. And I was like, well, what's the other 25? And you're like, well, the other 25 still need to be reminded, even if they know it. And I told you, I said, I'm going to prove you wrong.
Right. I remember
this. And I went out for a year, and one of, well, I'm not going into that. So I tried to prove you wrong for a year, and I came back to you after a year, and I go, here's the thing, dude, you are wrong. And you're like, really? And I go, yeah, it's 90-10.
It is.
And that's I am telling you, I have shared that with so many people who have said to me, I don't have anything to teach you. I don't have anything to say. Nobody cares what I have to say. My 20 years of experience in X industry doesn't matter. Holy crap, does it?
Oh my God.
And how did you figure that out? Where did you come to the 75-25 or 70-30 or 60-40, whatever the hell it is?
I feel like I figured everything out from going bankrupt the first time.
Okay.
Like, what the hell?
Okay.
No, but seriously, we're kind of wired this way naturally. And if you're listening to this show, maybe you're not wired this way you want to be. And maybe you are, because that's why you're listening to the show. Either way.
Yeah.
You're wired to like chase continual personal improvement, to be better at your job, and to wonder what other people are doing, that sort of thing. So you and I are kind of wired that way. I feel like a lot of salespeople are, not all of them. And that's where it started was like, okay, well, what do I not know? And I know these things, but what does someone else know? And I used to sometimes in a bad way, what do they say? The comparison is the
thief of joy.
Thief of joy, right? So I used to do that. I was like, what are these other people doing that I'm not doing because they got this thing or this house? And what I realized is nobody knows what they're doing. Nobody knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
And when I started in the sales coaching training business, it was really interesting to me when I'd meet someone that I looked up to beyond anything. Like, this person has life figured out, like their business or their family or whatever.
Right.
And then I'd sit and talk to them. And then almost in like a disenchant, like they don't have anything figured out. And I'm like, what the hell's going on here? You know what I mean? It's like nothing. There's no book. Like, oh, here's how you run a company. And then I'd hear people make excuses for things like, well, it's easy for him. Well, he owns the company. I'm like, didn't he start the company from scratch, like on credit cards? They're like, yeah, but he owns it. I'm like, right, he owns it. Like, so I just, and again, age is a nice teacher. You just realize you just don't know shit.
No.
And if you stay in that mentality, if you don't know shit, then it's pretty good, because you keep trying to learn stuff.
Right.
But that's, to me, where it all started, was this realization of meeting people that I thought had life figured out, learning and understanding that they didn't. And that maybe some things that I had learned, I'm just the communicator, the vessel to teach an idea to somebody else, but they still need that. The vessel part and the link is still good. You don't have to have the original ideas.
Right.
So.
And I think that's where a lot of people get caught up, and they're like, well, I don't even know how to be a vessel. And it's like, yeah, you do. Just open your mouth. Right. And I think as you and I have lived life and grown up, we've seen a lot of people who have tried stuff and failed.
Yes.
And we've seen probably more people who, like what we were talking about, I'm going to do a podcast. I'm getting ready to do the thing. Yes. And they just never do the thing.
Yes.
And I love that you said that you learned it from going bankrupt, because for anybody that's listening, it reminds me of that line from Dumb and Dumber where he's like, so you're saying there's a chance.
There's a chance.
So that I love that 75-25. And then that leads me to this other thing, and I don't know if you've always said it, if we co-created it, if I stole it from you, I don't know, probably the latter. But I even said it to a lady today. I was at a client. She was making origami cranes. Yeah. And I said, a friend of mine and I say this saying to each other, that it wasn't a thing until it was, and now it is. And I said, look at, there was nothing. It was just paper before, and now you've made this thing. And she's like, I love that.
It's true,
and
though,
I'm like,
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Where did you think? Was that
I
your
don't think
saying?
So. I think you and I, it may have been a co-creation thing. I feel like you said it first, but then you said I said it, and I didn't remember saying it. So either way, we'll take co-credit for it. But it's so true, isn't it? Like, yeah, so many people. I just did for some of my clients. I threw out in one of my run some peer groups for VPs of sales, and I started talking about podcasting. And a couple of them, how it goes. Yeah, I've always thought about it. We should be doing it. I'm like, okay. Yep. I said, tell you what, outside of the engagement, like no extra money or anything, anybody that wants to come do Podcast 101, come on over. Okay.
Wow.
With 4 people, I know these guys really well. They're in my group, but and one of them brought their team with them. And I'm sitting there, and I told them, and 2 of them, I said, first thing you do, if you want to start a podcast, get the equipment. If you don't have the equipment, get the equipment. 2 of them walked in with their podcast starter kits.
No way.
Like they bought on Amazon. I'm like, good. Now you're going.
Yep.
Now you got to open the thing up and learn how to use it, and then go
Right.
record a show. And I gave them some more framework stuff, but
Sure.
it's a thing. Like now, this is a thing. We're
well, and the fact
your
that
first episode, it's a thing.
Yeah,
Right?
I know.
It's here.
Like
There it is.
I have a cover. For it. I've got a website that we bought the domain for.
Right.
The salesparkpodcast.com. Like,
see,
it's
a thing.
It's a thing.
Yes.
And I cannot just underscore that enough of the difference between so many people that are successful. I think there's two things. One, the willingness to start and do. So, I mean, you can have the willingness, but you got to, buy the podcast equipment, make business cards, buy a website, whatever it is. But secondly, there has to be something that you put it out there in the world and see, like, am I going to fail or am I not going to fail?
Yes.
And I was telling my wife yesterday, we were on a walk, we were looking at the electrical wires that run around our neighborhood. And I said, I just got done with this book in my book club about Thomas Edison. And he had a factory with over 100 people. He called it like the invention laboratory or something, where they failed hundreds of times a week to try to figure out something that we take for granted when we flick a switch and the light bulb comes on.
Yes.
And I think over and over and over, what would have happened if he just said, we're just not figuring it out. We're done.
Right. Everybody go home.
I mean, you've been podcasting for 19 years.
Yeah.
And you said somebody argued with, as we were, ramping up, said somebody argued with you that they didn't have podcasts back then.
Right.
It's like,
Totally.
okay. Go look up the episode.
I'll show it to you, Chief. God, I feel like I was at that Thomas Edison Museum in Fort Myers, Florida one time. Was it in Florida? I feel like I went there.
No, he was somewhere. It was like Pennsylvania. Somewhere,
oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, east. But
there's some I've been there, some, but it was that same story. He just had guys and gals like just making shit up, and you're right.
And failing over and over. How many times, if you had to guess, don't put a whole lot of thought into it, but from the time you started your sales training business until where you are now, how many times have you pivoted? How many times have you scrapped things that you started? How many times have you gone? How many times have you built the thing where you go, this is it, and you take it to the market and they're like, yeah, we don't want that.
Totally.
How many times does that happen?
It's so funny you bring this up because I've been doing like my own work. So trying to again, chasing a little self-improvement. So I'm running on this system, and part of this system is I'm supposed to go take these, they're called clarity breaks. The system's called EOS. A lot of people have heard of EOS. So we run on EOS at Blaine Zebra, and you got to take clarity breaks. And clarity break is just literally a blank page. Go take your notebook and go sit somewhere and let your subconscious work. And you just start writing. It's awesome. Clarity break. Little tip for everybody. And
don't
you can
take
look it
your
up.
phone.
Yeah. Don't take it for no phones. No, literally written. So because I hadn't done this for so long, I didn't have my old notebooks. I couldn't find them. So I found them. They were buried in this drawer in our office. I popped them open. I was like, oh my God, there are things in there that I wrote down, like ideas, sketchy things.
Yeah.
That, and some of them actually came true later. Some of them what the hell was I thinking?
Totally.
Even I was originally going to be like before it was even cool, a fractional VP of sales, or a whole little business model for that. Then it's not scalable, whatever.
Yeah.
I wrote down a business plan called "On Your Market, Set, Get Hired." There was to help college kids who didn't have a business placement office like we had at Indiana University. Small college, And so, yes, all the time. I mean, the current state we're in, the Blind Zebra Sales Operating System came accidentally because we started running on EOS, and I'm like, why do I have this for sales? I just don't have it organized right.
Right.
So it just keeps going and going and going. I think that's a good lesson for salespeople, is just the concept of adaptability, of being able to move or pivot or whatever word you want to use there.
Yeah.
And just be adaptable to your environment. People are like, oh, they're changing our pricing. And I'm like, yeah, so you can stay in business, dude. That's why they're changing your pricing, so you have a freaking job.
Right.
Our pricing's going up. I'm like, have you not been paying attention? Yeah, everybody's is going up.
Right. Have you looked at your grocery bill lately?
Anything. It's just so funny how people are, isn't it?
Wow. So in light of that, all these things that you've done and pivoted and tried and all the experience that you've had, and I don't know if you can just have one, but I know you've worked with so many people. Where do you think most salespeople miss it? And I'll let you interpret that however you want.
I like it. Yeah. Thinking. It's the thinking pause, the thinking sigh.
Oh yeah.
I want to say so many things. The number one place I think at the core is they don't have a set of foundational, we call them guiding principles. Some might call them core values that they operate from that are their own.
Why is that important?
I think it's like if you held up two eggs and one was hard boiled and one wasn't, and you dropped them, from a 6-foot ladder, 8-foot ladder, whatever, the non-boiled egg is going to splatter and the other one's going to bounce. The one that splatters is the salesperson that doesn't have an internal set of true north guiding principles, whatever values, whatever you want to call it. The hard-boiled egg does, so it can bounce. It's resilient. It'll still crack. The shell will still crack a little bit, but it's still there, still intact. You can still, do something with it. So, and I think then the root cause, that's the root cause, the kind of outcome, the way it shows itself for sales teams and salespeople. Then they behave how they think they're supposed to behave, not how they want to behave based on their own, set of values. So then they think, my job is to sell everybody I come in contact with. Everything I do is operating around trying to get every deal that I want. And I don't think that's the best way to do it. I think that makes it inefficient, and I think it drives people away. So things like that. That's the biggest thing I can do.
And I think taking your analogy a little bit further, when the market, when your clients, when the logistics, the supply chain fail, because they will.
Yep.
I see those two eggs. It's like it's a testing of those core values.
Yes.
Will you run at the first sight of trouble and when things get hard, or do you know that this is what you were supposed to do? And that is making me think about during COVID. I had just started my business in mid 2018. So I was just getting going and I had a lot of momentum, and then COVID hit and just was a kick in the nuts, just over and over again, to the point that I was like, should I be doing what I'm doing? And I honestly went back through the 30-day program that I wrote that helps people, hone in on what that thing is. And I got to the end and I was like, well, shit, this says I'm supposed to be doing what
right. Still here.
And here's the other thing. Just that thought didn't bring money in the door. I worked at the Target warehouse, 12-hour shifts, Friday, Saturday, Sunday in Indiana with no air conditioning. Sucked. Right. It's like talk about dirty jobs and jobs I don't want for $1,000, please, Alex. Like that. Like I would never want to do that again. And I think about that Elton John song. I know you're a big piano player, fan of Elton John. I'm still standing. Because you just keep doing what it is that you need to do. And for me, I feel like if I was that hard-boiled egg by the end of those things, I maybe had just a few pieces of shell left.
Right.
But I was, I'm still there.
It's awesome.
One of the things that I love about your content and what you do and what you've developed is I got to be, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I am still your only non-client who got certified in your content. Is that true?
That's true.
Okay.
And now that's the old.
Yes, the old.
It's a little deeper now.
Yes.
But yes, the old way you certify, you were the only non-client that.
Which to me, I mean, I take that as a badge of honor.
100%.
But the thing that I have continued to take with me from that is, well, let me back up. When I was in my roles in the corporate world, I developed training. I bought training. I facilitated training. I helped, lead and guided and mess with it. I did a lot of things. And so I've seen the scripts and I've seen the playbooks and I've seen the things. And what I loved about yours was that it didn't start with what you say or how you act, which so many people are like, I got to have the script when I get on the phone. I got to have the playbook. And how do I make the first call and then the second call? And how do I start doing outreach? And what do I do? You all started, and I would assume largely still do, with mindset, with what's going on above the shoulders. Talk a little bit about why that's the starting focus.
Yeah, it's the egg example, and you give a great example for you personally about what that looks like for you. When we jump to do and to say too quickly without examining, well, how am I feeling on the inside? If you build that outside do and say stuff on a no foundation or a weak foundation, those tools and those things become weaker, just like the inside of a non-hard-boiled egg. Just there's nothing there. It's liquid goo. There's nothing there. And so that's the first thing, is that I want everything that I do and say to be based on something. I want them to be grounded in a philosophy. So we have 10, we call them guiding principles now in our operating system, but there's 10 of them. I'm sure you remember, Jay, the first three, abundance, detachment, and intention. And those three things together, if I carry that energy with me everywhere I go, then anything that I do or say, if it's grounded on that, it's going to be clean. It's going to be good and easy.
Can you unpack those three for us? Because I know that there are some people who are listening who are going to think about those things in a particular way. And I remember the acronym A.I.D to help me remember the Holy Trinity. Like it's an aid to what we do.
Bravo!
Look at that. So you can. I've stolen enough from you. Feel free to take that.
I love it, dude.
All you'd like.
Bravo! I love it. It goes with
so. Unpack each one of those quickly and what those mean for what you do and how you do it.
Yep. None of those words I invented, just put them into a framework. Obviously the abundance. And I just did this last night driving home from my stepson's lacrosse game. The world around us is abundant. I'm not talking, and I'm a big space geek too. So I love that stuff. I'm just talking like in your little town, our little town of Indianapolis, Indiana. You say, well, it's the 12th biggest city in the country. It doesn't matter. There's a bunch of cornfields and soybeans, 10 miles to the east, west, north and south. They're just here. And we were driving home. This is abundance versus scarcity. And I looked over at the strip mall, and there was a quilting shop in there. And I don't quilt, never have, no desire. And
can't imagine that you do.
No. I said, who do you think? Somebody owns the quilting shop. And someone started the quilting shop just like you started the Sales Spark podcast today. And people work there, and people go there and spend money. And we were right by this. We're Keystone. It's a big, for those of you not from Indianapolis, one of the big major thoroughfares next to a big interstate, 465. And there's some buildings right there. So I asked Steph, I'm like, who do you think owns the quilting school? Isn't that crazy? And if you sell quilting stuff, that person's one of your customers. You call on them.
Right.
And then I go, do you see all those buildings over there? Every one of those buildings has a business in it, multiple businesses. And every one of those businesses has salespeople in it. Right in that little bitty, it's less than a half a mile in radius.
Yeah.
I'm like, the abundance of our world is just mind blowing.
Yeah.
And that's just a tiny little patch of grass in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Yeah.
Then spread out to outside of Indianapolis and Indiana. Then go over to Ohio and Columbus and Cincinnati and Louisville. It's the same freaking thing.
Right.
It's mind blowing. So for us to get caught up in, well, it's really hard out there. There's not enough customers. I'm like, you got to be just blind. Like your eye, So that's the first thing I always say is you've got to find the cues. You'll find what you're looking for. You can go find a deserted strip mall with nothing in it. Go, oh, look, times are tough.
Right.
Or you can go find one like, good God, look at all these people. God, there's a line out the door for that place.
Yeah.
You'll find what you're looking for. So look for abundance. Look for opportunity in places.
Love that.
That's the first one. And then that leads us to detachment, going off of your acronym, but it's how I've got it memorized.
Right.
It's A.I.D. It's an A.I.D. And that is the ability to emotionally react to all my outcomes. My new favorite guy currently to follow is Sadhguru, and I watch him on TikTok all the time, and he's like really evolved human, I think. But he talks about just like we, all of our suffering is in the past and the future. All of it, like the mental kind of emotional suffering, the past, the future. He's like, it's just the past is the past. There's nothing you can do, and it doesn't even exist except in your mind. It's all it exists.
Yeah.
When you really step back from it,
Yeah.
be a little deep on you. And then
Yeah.
the future worry, concern is in the future. That hasn't happened yet either. So you have this like hard to understand, like present moment thing, like, damn. So how do I translate that? Detachment. I can let go of those things. If I lost a big deal last week, that's over. It's done.
Yeah.
And I can only act and do what's right in front of me today.
And I think the thing for me when I think about detachment that really helped me when I was, getting certified in that content is so many salespeople get so hung up in, well, if I win this, then I'm gonna fill in the blank. Then I'm the, I'm gonna win. Where I used to work, it was the Eagle was the top sales award. Then I'm gonna be the top. Then I'm gonna win the trip. Then I'm gonna buy the boat. Then I'm gonna get the summer house. Then I'm gonna then everybody in my company is gonna know who I am. The problem with that is on the flip side is if you lose it, you go, oh, well, I suck. I'm no good. Right. I'm not. And so much of salespeople's identity is based on what have they won and what have they lost. Now, the sales cycle helps bolster that because it's like, you were the number one person in Q1. Great. Well, it's middle of Q2. And what have you done for me lately? Right. So it's like that's never going to go away.
Yeah.
But what I loved about hearing that was that it doesn't the biggest win in my life doesn't define who I am. It might because those cores of my egg are still the same. If I lose the biggest deal of my life, it doesn't define who I am.
Awesome.
And to me, when I heard that from you the first time, I was like, oh, it just meant so much for me. And because I had worked and managed salespeople and I had seen so many, get a crushing defeat, and it affected their entire next quarter because they couldn't let it go.
Yes.
And I, had I known what I know now and could say to them, you got a time machine? You going to go back and change that? I don't think you can go back and change that as far as I know. So I think that one for me was a game changer and a mindset changer.
That's great.
And
I think very, very few salespeople have a grasp of what that means for them. I love I love when people take an idea, concept, and say, here's what it means for me.
Yes.
That's brilliant. Like my dorky little thing, it comes from refereeing. And I'll use this in my own work though, when people are yelling at me on the NFL field, which they do, if it doesn't bother me anymore, but when it did, or if a coach is mad, I really made a mistake. I've got to stay out of my own head. I'll say they're mad at my shirt. They're not mad at me. They're mad at my shirt. The role that I'm
like
playing.
that.
So it kind of like separates me. So I'm not internalizing that to think, oh, I suck. I'm no good at this, creeping in. So that's
before you go on to the third one, I just have to say, and people will hear me say this multiple times on this podcast. I am comfortably or naively, sometimes both, unaware of things that I should be unaware of. And I remember, I don't know if you remember this, but I asked you once, and I knew. I was sitting with you when you got the call for the first Super Bowl to be the alternate.
Yeah. The alternate one.
Yeah,
yes.
For that one.
Yes.
And it may have even been around then, but I clearly knew what you do in and I said, and I just remember your face. I wish I had a picture of it. I go, why did you name your company Blind Zebra? And that was your reaction. You started laughing, and then you looked at me and you're like, oh, you're serious. And I was like, yeah. And I don't know if you remember this, but here's what you did. You go, dude, really? And I was like, yeah. And you go, okay. So what do I do when I'm not doing stuff at Blind Zebra? And I said, and I was like pissed. I was like,
right.
You're an NFL official, like, duh, and you're like, anything? Yeah, and I'm like,
nothing.
I'm like,
no.
And you're like, okay. And what do I wear every Sunday or Saturday or Monday or whatever time it is on the field? And I'm like, pants and a black and white striped shirt. And you were like, and I felt like it was like a Chandler and Joey thing from Friends, because you're like looking at me and you're like, and you saw my eye, you're like, there it is. I was like, because you're an NFL, and you're like, yeah.
There you go.
So
bravo. Well played. I love the vulnerability there.
Yeah.
And it still happens, and it happened, but it's great because it invites, and you're one of the best branders that I know. it invites a story.
It
Invites a
does.
story. It's
does.
really great. It's really great.
Awesome.
So you talk about intention or intent?
Yes. Yeah.
Let's do that one.
Last one.
This is my and I've actually evolved this one for me personally. Again, in
Okay.
the spirit of people using it. So you talk about what my intent is, and if you pulled 50 guys in a bar, like what's a salesperson's job? Like to sell. You know, what do they get? That's for them, right? It's a selfish job. Like, look what I closed. I see it all the time on LinkedIn. Like, oh, I was number one. I did this, and I got this, and I. No one ever says, hey, my clients achieved this from the thing that I sold them. No one ever says that on LinkedIn, do they? Nope.
Yep.
So, to really, really dial in and like, what is my intention with other humans, just in general? I want other humans to be better off than they were when I talked to them that day, in any way, shape, or form, just for that little touch. And then I want them to get what they want, and I want to be helpful to them and resourceful. And sometimes that means working with them as a client. Sometimes it means being on a podcast with them. Sometimes it means listening to them. It can mean all sorts of things. And I'm never, achieve that all the time. But that's always the goal. So that's my energy going in. So I'm not wanting anything for me. I'm not looking to get something out of this. I'm not sitting there going, I hope Jason asked me about this thing so I can promote it. Like, I don't even have anything to promote.
Right.
I don't care. I'm just like here to be with you, to talk about people that might be listening that could help someone. That's it.
Yeah.
Then you're clean. That's good intention. Where it actually helps mechanically, though, I think, is in sales efficiency. Because when you show up with that kind of energy, you're not looking at every opportunity as a thing to get. And when you look at every opportunity as a thing to get, you waste a shit ton of time chasing things you shouldn't chase.
Oh,
and people that listen to this, I guarantee you, though, if they go to their sales funnel, they're going to go, oh man, I've been chasing that one a long time.
Yep.
And I'm like, why have you been chasing it so long? What a waste of time.
Yeah.
What a waste of time. And theirs and yours both. Just cut it loose, man.
Yeah.
Cut it loose. The world's abundant. Another one will show up. It just will. So that's one that I think of. Some people that which someone just said this the other day. I was like, it's like cringy a little bit. Like, I'm not here to sell you anything.
Oh,
you couldn't say anything worse to somebody these days.
Right. And I'm not listening. I don't care what you say after. You've already lost
It's
me.
like, yeah, totally. And so, yeah, I'm like, no, man. And what that, I just question the intention behind that.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard that in a long time, but I heard it just last week, and I was like, oh yeah.
That reminds me of, I'm sure you remember this guy. He was quasi famous, and I was always convinced he was a mobster, but the guy that owned Don's Guns, remember his slogan?
Oh, 100%.
I don't like to make money, folks. I just love to sell guns.
Sell guns.
I'm pretty sure you like to make money.
I've seen your house, Big Don, down there in Greenwood, where he lived. Right? That's local. It's a local thing.
Yeah. 100%.
Don's Guns.
All right, so I got two more questions to take us home. The first one, and you said something about it, and in fact, again, I have you to thank for this thing. You said to me a couple of years ago, you go, hey, Barnaby, why aren't you hiring yourself out as a fractional sales leader? And my response was, well, because first of all, I don't know what that means. And and secondly, maybe if I did, I would go do that thing. And what's been super cool and really has led to the birth of this podcast is I did that, and I put together an offering that wasn't a thing until it was, and now it is. And I found clients, and I helped them, and found out that I absolutely, I mean, talk about a big pivot for me, or a continued pivot, was just realizing how much I love sales and I love people development, and this fractional thing for me gets both of those. So, and I know you've done some fractional sales work too. How have you seen fractional sales help organizations versus bringing in a full-time sales person to do that?
That's a great question. It's one of the greatest things a growing business can do, in my opinion, for two different sides of the coin here for the reason. So the first is, as a business owner or someone who's a founder of something, and they've been doing founder selling and thing, then they hire a couple of salespeople and they're playing sales manager. It is a great leverage point that gets them out of it, but not too great. They're still nearby because they still are in the day to day. So I think there's no, and I love the idea of like, I love Occam's razor, like the best answer to any problem is the simplest one. It's the simplest thing to do for leverage first, to me. It's a great move to do something fractionally versus going all in. So I think it's just brilliant to bring. I love the gift of outside perspective. I think that's a beautiful thing. That
great way to put that
as a fractional. Because and the other thing you have as a fractional, if you've got multiple clients, you also have this little petri dish at each client. You can see what's working and bring it back to me.
Yes.
Well, if you work with me full time, I'm the CEO and you're my VP of sales, you're just in my shop the whole time. You're not in anybody else's shop.
Right.
As a fractional, I get that great broad gift of perspective. It's just fantastic.
Love that.
On the other side of the coin is the kind of the financial commitment side. And I know this has never happened, Barnaby, but and I was that, I was real easy to fire, man. The way you fired me as a consultant coach guy, I was like, hey, Bryan, we're going to stop the program. I'm like, okay. That was it. Like, you didn't have to walk me out to my car or call HR or give me my key fob or any of that jazz. And so from an ownership standpoint, the risk is less. It's worth the investment. The upside's really high. The downside is really low. You're going to spend some money. You're going to spend money either way. So that to me becomes a wash. Then you look at commitment levels. And I think I then for you personally, and I did that for a little bit, not really, I've done it a couple times, but that's not really our model anymore. But there's something very rewarding to say, I built that or I helped build that.
Yes.
Even if you hand it off to they're, hey, we're going to bring someone full-time in-house. I'm like, that's really cool and good. And you started it.
Yep.
There's a guy that was more of a fractional guy than I was. We shared a client. I was more the trainer coach. He was the fractional guy. And his model, he was so great. He was very definitive. He said, I come into a company, I stay typically for 18 months. I get everything stabilized, the structure built. I then hire my replacement in the last 6 months. I train them and I leave.
Yeah.
I'm like, that is beautiful, man. And he did. He was awesome at it. Really, really good.
I totally agree with that. And I have learned in my life, and I've also had a conversation with my dad who owned a construction company when I was a kid growing up, and basically realized I was the same as he was. He would say he'd love to sell the job, to write, to do the drawing for the job and to frame the job. And he said, as soon as the last nail was in the frame, he said, I lost interest.
There you go.
And I'm like, I wish you would have told me that when I was 18, because you just described my life. And I'm basically a framer. I'm not a maintainer. That's the phrase that I use. And it's so, because I get bored, and you don't, if you hand me a book of business that's established and want me to babysit it, I will run it into the ground most likely, because I just don't love to do it. I mean, it certainly won't grow, but if you give me a mess to clean up and things to go find and big clients to go, yeah, man, I'm all about that challenge, but because I'm a framer and not a maintainer.
Awesome.
So I love that perspective. All right, here's the last question. This will always be the last question of the Sales Spark podcast. So consider that you have a matchbox of different tools that you can use, but somebody says you can only take one match out of here and strike that to make a difference today. What is the one match that you would strike?
I'm going to give you a very tactical answer. And the tactical answer is actually it's a blind zebra tool, but it's
of course,
it's a mutual timeline agreement. The match I would strike that makes just life good for everybody is being a student of my calendar, and everything gets booked and inked on calendars always. And if you're listening to this, I can guarantee you don't do that.
Totally.
Guarantee you don't do that if you're listening to this. You think you do, but you don't. And that is a match that, man, you strike that one, it gets good for everybody. Get good for me, my customers, my prospects, my company, my internal people that I work with. If everyone just runs a real clean, efficient calendar with clarity and efficiency, life's pretty good.
One might say that you strike that match and start a bonfire that everybody can gather around.
Oh, who would say that?
See what I did there? All right, Mr. Neale, this has been, dude, I have to keep talking because I'll get emotional, but I do want you to know, look what I had in my hand the whole time.
The blind zebra pen. Little magic pixie dust.
I had it right here. So, hey man, I couldn't think. I mean, when I was asked who should be the first guest, there was no doubt. I owe so much to you. And
thanks, dude.
I'm super grateful.
I'm super grateful to watch you on your journey, dude.
Yeah,
be a little part of it. So
really appreciate it.
Explain anything about football you ever need me to.
I appreciate that. Thanks, brother. And thanks for joining us on the first inaugural episode of the Sales Spark podcast.